All right, Chuck. International break. Club football is not playing, and people are losing their minds around the world. There was the slap heard around the world, and there was some shenanigans on Twitter where some guy apparently was waiting on a payout from Betway in order to cover his tab at the bar. I'm glad club football is on the return soon, but until then, we'll cover what happened. Welcome to Tour Front. I am Jay, and I'm not by myself. As I said, I'm joined by Chuck. What up, Chuck?
What's up, Jay? What's up to listeners, viewers, everyone? So, the last of the international break, if you're particularly a South African fan, or if you watched Bafana's game, you saw the demolition job that was carried out by France, and it was not a pretty sight at all. We were smashed in the end 5-0 by France. It was a big gap in class. I mean, mind you, this is world champions, arguably world number one, regardless of what FIFA stats say throughout the years. The best team in the world according to what they carry, which is a World Cup trophy. Jay, when you look at that particular performance, yes, we got smashed 5-0. Scoreboard aside, when you look at how Bafana played against France, the gap in quality, what do you think that's down to? What do you make of that particular performance?
So first of all, the performance. The performance was, I don't want to say David versus Goliath, because when this term is used, I kind of feel like people look over the fact that the winner in that contest was a smaller guy. But it was a giant, so to speak, in the game versus, like it or not, a minnow.
True.
And as a result, it was confusing for me in terms of the performance from the Bafana side. On the French side, they were just better. They were just better. You saw in the midfield, Golo just striding through as he pleased, picking the ball off of them, and you saw with their press, like literally, we were losing the ball consistently at the back, trying to play out from the back, and France just picked us off. Even that playing out from the back, why was that the tactic? Maybe this is how Broos wants to play. This is the identity that he wants Bafana to take on. But I feel as though you need to be able to gauge your opponent, and you need to be able to adjust on the fly. Not even, and within 5 minutes, you could tell that this is not what you want to do against this opponent, because we are not that great with our passing game. We are not press resistant. So there was that issue. Then there was the issue of how we set up. When you then recognize that this team is going to pour it on, I think to myself, this is where then Bafana should be adopting a Spurs versus Man City, where you are sitting back, where you are playing in the low block, where you are defensively astute, and you understand that they're going to have a majority of the ball and they're going to come at you, but then you make it hard for them to break you down. But then that didn't happen. One, because for whatever reason, Bafana were playing a high line, and we were being exposed on the wings. Like every single time they found the ball behind the fullbacks, Griezmann looked like he was 22. He looked like he had Mbappe's legs. And I haven't seen Griezmann sprint and out-sprint an opponent like that in forever. But against Bafana, that was the case. I mean, even on the side where he was playing with Leke, I do believe is the best that we have at left back at the moment. But when you see Leke at Sundowns, you see him mostly attacking. I watch a lot of Sundowns because I'm a Sundowns fan, but like I cannot tell you what my rating is of Leke as a defender, because he's never in that position much.
Always pressed, to actually defend.
But we can't even play that low block, Chuck, because if you're watching the PSL, when you look at the shape that PSL teams take, you can't quite tell that they are coached up in how to play in a low block. How do they set up when they don't have the ball? So you don't suddenly get to national team level and suddenly these things that you want these players to perform are you're gonna teach it to them in what a few weeks of camp, and they're gonna be able to carry it out when they get onto the pitch against the France. So that was the confusion of the performance, and to go into what needs to happen. We'll come back to that one. What did you make of the performance?
Look, I saw these numbers online. They weren't. To clarify, not from the FIFA official website, but North Macedonia is ranked just one place above Bafana. They knocked out Italy from qualifying for the World Cup. They pushed Portugal, and actually, it was, even though Portugal won 2-0, it was a very tense affair. And I mean, kudos to them for even getting to the point where they could get to the World Cup qualification. But when you look at those two sides, Jay, fine, North Macedonia when it comes to the Euros, they're the minnows. We failed to qualify for the World Cup. We failed to qualify for AFCON. And sadly, it's somewhat the norm now. As a Bafana fan, you know that these things are not quite going to get there. What I made of the performance, Jay, is that, man, firstly, team selection. Sianda Kulu does not have a club. But he's playing ahead of people in the national team. Not even playing ahead.
He's using Bafana to stay fit. The national team.
Number two, Munare. I see him in a Pirates shirt every other week. I'm not convinced. He's not at least even the Munare last season. He's a step off it at this particular time in the game. When they added Goodman Musele, that was added impetus that I thought this guy should have been playing from the beginning, right? Because he does the very same thing, which is outshine Munare at Pirates. Mm-hmm. He came there, made a difference, not to actually affect the game, but to have Bafana play better in those particular sporadic moments. But generally, in Ntwana, our midfield could not stand toe to toe with France's midfield. We can't even shine their shoes, to be honest, because they were waltzing through the midfield.
Lodem Vala with the Shibobo from Mbappe there.
It was. You know what? It was a big golfing class. But where we are at fault, Jay, and I think it's not just down at national team level, but our general style. I mean, we always lament, and as much as we do watch the PSL, we lament that it is a bore to watch because it's very slow, it's very predictable, and it's not very technical as a game to watch. There aren't too many players that you're like, this guy over here, he's sauce. This guy over here has got raw pace. This guy, we're just watching football basically. And you can see that, and you can see how that comes to light when you look at players like Abo Lake up front. He's good on the ball, but when he's in those situations, mind you, he's being marked by Abo Varane, he's being marked by Abo Saliba, and it's not really easy. But he can carry the ball, but after that doesn't know what to do. The guys aren't even there to come and support him. When we try to play from the back, Jay, I think after the 10th minute, when we've been intercepted 10 times, it should ring a bell that, guys, I think here's what coaches tend to say, and this is the model that they use, as we need to play like a Cosatina, meaning when we need to be compact, come together, and then stretch out when we can. When we're playing from the back and we clearly don't have the quality, as you point out, to pass the ball, give us more options. Because if I'm going to try to find Monare with a 20-meter pass and then I lose the ball and do it again 5 minutes later, do it again 30 seconds later, it's really not learning from what we're doing when we're going wrong. So I think if we're going to try to do that and we're going to stick to our guns and say we're going to play this way, we need to find a plan B to our original idea or to our philosophy. There needs to be a plan A, plan B, a plan C to try to do the philosophy. But if we're going to hit the brick wall over and over again, as Mbappe put up on Instagram, it was just there for some fun.
But you see, Chuck, I don't think you can just figure this out at national level, like at international level. When you say that the players don't have the technical ability, they do not have the technical ability to beat the press. The idea is there, right? You can have an idea all you want, but if you cannot execute it, what good is the idea? Sure. Because sure, you want to play on the front foot perhaps, and you want to play out from the back, but then if the players who are supposed to execute that plan do not have the technical ability, they're not suddenly going to develop it because they've been in camp with this coach from Belgium for a period of 2 weeks. What I saw in the two internationals, actually, even going back to the game against Guinea, I saw that the PSL was exposed. The PSL was exposed for its lack of pace in the game against France, and the PSL was exposed for its lack of goal scoring in the game against Guinea. In the game against Guinea, without exaggerating, I will say that South Africa should have been 3 or 4-0 up by half time. But they created these chances but could not convert them. And that was not a shock to me because when I watched the PSL, and everyone who watches the PSL laments the same thing, there aren't enough goals in our game. When you see a Mamelodi Sundowns be able to play out from the back, and it's easy, that is very different because than when you play against France, because the teams in the PSL don't press. And so it looks better than what it actually is because the opponent is not pressuring you into being brilliant at doing that. So the issue is not at an international level. Bafana will always reflect what is happening with the PSL. This is true of every country in the world. It is a reflection of their local league, if most of the players are based in the local league, as Bafana is the case, or of where their players are based internationally. In the past, we've had players like Benny McCarthy and Stephen Pienaar who played overseas. These guys barely played in the PSL, which means most of their development then happened in Europe. and we don't have that at this point. We don't have young players transition from like 15, 16, 17 and go directly to overseas where the quality of football is higher, whether you want to admit that or not. Instead, as a recent study proved, is that when they compared 60 leagues around the world, the PSL being one of them, we have one of the lowest turnovers of young players which are playing in the PSL. We're bottom 5 in that study. We don't have young players playing at the very top of the game. You are considered a young player at 24. We are happy when a 24-year-old is coming through, whereas we should have your 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Do you look at Mbappe? And it's mad to think that he was doing what he was doing at the World Cup at 19. He's still only 23, and he looks like top 3, top 5 best players in the world. He has been in that position for a good 4 or 5 years right now. Not everyone's going to be Mbappe, but you should have at least one guy in that Bafana team where, okay, this is the guy that we're looking to for the future. We don't have those players. And this is a problem then that comes down. We know this is a problem that comes down to development, because if you don't get it right there, the national coach, whoever he is, Chuck, we are sitting now in 2022 and we consider Pitso Mosimane perhaps the greatest South African coach who ever was. It's easy to forget that Pitso coached Bafana, and he couldn't figure it out. We've qualified for, I believe we've qualified for one tournament of the back of our own efforts without hosting. Just one, the AFCON of 2019.
That's
in the last sad. 20 years.
That's very
in
sad.
the last 20 years. So we're going to keep changing coaches and nothing is going to change. Even if, sure, Safa needs a turnover itself, but even that is going to change. And if it changes, but then it doesn't impact what is happening on ground level, then we are going to continue watching Bafana and asking the same questions. What should we do? You can't do anything at that level.
So was someone saying that whoever's going to come in as coach for Bafana is somewhat like a hospital pass from Safa, because the structure is broken, there aren't enough players from the PSL that are of a high enough quality to actually make a good Bafana representation. So even if as a coach,
Chuck, you can go get Pep Guardiola and he's going to try to communicate an idea to these players. These players are going to be like, what exactly do you want us to do? And it's not because these players are not smart, but the football IQ is lacking because it has not been taught to them from a young age. So as I'm saying, then they suddenly getting together for a camp and they gonna figure out things that are not given to them at club level. It's never gonna happen.
So here's one thing though, as much as we do highlight the inefficiencies and misdemeanors, or rather the lack of processes and structures Safa-wise clubs, Hugo Broos is taking a very big leap of faith if he's taking his crop of players from the PSL, knowing what the PSL is. And at that as well, overlooking the players who are playing for the most dominant side in the PSL, who are actually doing very well in Africa, and that is in Jali and Zwane. Shining lights currently in this particular season. And he won't pick them for whatever reason. Initially it was because of age, initially it was because of experience, but now when you look at the players that he's actually introducing to the Bafana setup, these comments don't quite hold water, because, to quote, he said, the question of Jali and Zwane, they played in the AFCON qualifiers last year, but we didn't qualify. Why didn't we qualify if they're that good? I mean, by that merit, then they should scrap the entire team Italy. By that merit, they should scrap the entire team Netherlands when they failed to qualify. But that didn't happen. You take the best that you have and you build on from there. So Hugo Broos is not doing himself any favors, because, I mean, if you look at Sundowns and how they play against Al Ahly, teams who actually press, teams who actually have them look at a different brand of football, a different style of football. They are actually able and adept to playing with those players. I mean, when you talk about Ndaba Zabo, Benny McCarthy and Stephen Pienaar, and when they actually went overseas and when they actually developed, it's not like Obo Shabalala going at 30 because, well, I don't know, whatever move, and whoever going Israel and Saudi Arabia for a little stint and coming back. It is quite risky as a coach to say, I want local players, I want to start from scratch and not pick the best. So for me, that's a controversial point that Broos has raised himself, and I think he's shooting himself in the foot with that. Do you think we need to have more Sundowns players in the Bafana setup?
So, Hugo Broos.
And also, lastly, it's quite strange, which is since Mosimane has joined Sundowns until to date as Al Ahly, we haven't seen enough Sundowns players, regardless of what they do on the National League. So that is one of those controversies, I guess.
More stranger ones. You know what? If the coach has identified that he does not want to pick these players because he does not see a future with these players, if he has established that he is building for the future, and he looks at the two 32, 33-year-olds and he concludes that he does not see a place for them in his vision for the future, that's fine. Also, if his comments when he makes because it's unfair to say, well, Zwane and Jali were there, but then we didn't qualify for the AFCON or the World Cup. That's a bit unfair to just put it on them. That was a team effort. But if what he means by that is if he's using their names as, well, that group of players or that generation of players have not done anything, then I'm okay with that. Where it's confusing is, as you say, that if you want to get rid of that generation of players, fine. But then you are then bringing in Emunari suddenly, who is similar age range. You had said that you don't want Lake might not make it into the squad because he's 30 and he does not have previous Bafana experience or international experience, and then he's playing. So for me, it's contradictory. Like, pick a side. Make your choice. If you are not wanting to go with players beyond a certain age range, that's fine. But then when you are seemingly targeting particular players, that sounds to me as if he's marking his territory, that this is what I'm going to do and I'm not going to field questions from outside, and because give a justification, say that this is what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and then stick to that. But then when you make contradictory moves, then we're going to come back and ask the question, well, these guys, even at their age, they're still playing the best footy in the country, and at this point we haven't made the World Cup, we haven't made the AFCON, and the next AFCON is not that far down the road, and these guys are still playing the high level. If they're available for the national team, why then don't you pick them? Maybe you can develop a different vision for 2026 or beyond, that okay, for this next dispensation of the AFCON they'll be there, but then after that they won't. But then if the idea is you want to carry through players for the AFCON and then the upcoming World Cup, then you, as I'm saying, you must be consistent.
That's true. But I'm at loggerheads with this idea. I mean, yes, you're a coach. You want to have your own imprint on the squad. You want to start it from scratch and have your own mark. But I don't think you're necessarily a bad coach when you take the cream of the crop and you ride the crest of the waves.
It makes us best.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Del Bosque won the Euros under Marco Senna and that generation. But when Barcelona was on fire, when Real Madrid was on fire in that particular 5-year span, it was an easy ticket to pick those players for the 2010 World Cup and then subsequently 2012 Euros as well. When Bayern Munich and Dortmund made the Champions League final, it was easy for the French coach, German coach, to pick those players because those are the hot players. So right now, I say take the Sundowns players, establish a style, establish a core, and then slowly phase them out and get the players that you want. But to start from scratch at this point in time,
I think you make a good point, because if someone in the interim comes up who proves themselves better than those players, then it's a simple task of you just replace them with the better player. It doesn't have to be a matter of, well, I'm still waiting for this player to develop and he's going to develop while he's in the Bafana team. Yes, you want players to have international experience, but then you can have them in and around the squad. But if you are trying to get results, then it makes sense to have your best team in order to do that.
On the positive note, though, one thing I will commend Bruce about when he scheduled these fixtures against Guinea, against France, is that for too long, Bafana's been running away from the big boys. We've been playing Abo Zambia, Abo Lesotho, Swaziland. Every other day, we're playing these sub-Sahara countries.
We wanted the big boys. Look what happened, Chad.
Yeah, but we need to know how far we are, because if we're beating,
it's a great gauge.
Yeah, if we're beating Zambia 1-0 and we're drawing with Ethiopia, it doesn't really tell us where we are, because come World Cup qualifiers, AFCON qualifiers, then we're like, oh, we're short. So I think this is a great gauge. But then
you see, that's the other thing for me with the thrashing. Like we're not going to win the World Cup anytime soon. Our competition is on the continent. It is trying to make it to the World Cup. At the moment, we're going to be there to make up the numbers, but that's what we're trying to do. I don't think really even that result. The result was confusing in terms of the tactics, but in terms of, am I down on the result? Not too much, because as I've said, I have accepted that Bafana are the winners of world football, and you expect, maybe not quite 5, but you expect that the best team in the world, one of the best teams in the world, to run roughshod over you.
If you look at how they lined up from 1 to 11 and the subs that came on, they were not playing no games with us as much as it was a friendly. They won it.
They were there to whip us.
They were there to boost their confidence.
They were there to whip us.
Which eventually happened. But yeah, as Bafana guys, if your support keeps strong. If not, we wait for better days.